Black girl says, "Feed me and I'll heal your son." Millionaire laughs, but then impossible happened. Daniel, a successful billionaire, walked through the city streets, weighed down by the grim reality of his son Ethan's terminal illness. After countless failed treatments, hope was slipping away. As he walked, he noticed a young girl, Tiana, sitting calmly on the sidewalk. She looked up and said, "Feed me, and I'll heal your son." Taken aback, Daniel laughed it off, but something in her voice stopped him. It wasn't the first time he'd heard miraculous claims, but for some reason, this one lingered. Was there something more to her words? As he walked away, the thought of her promise stayed with him. Could she have the answer? Where are you watching from? Could this mysterious girl really hold the key? The next few days passed in a blur of confusion and disbelief. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Tiana's words. His son, Ethan, had been battling a terminal illness for months, and despite the best doctors and the latest treatments, nothing seemed to work. Daniel had tried everything, experimental drugs, state-of-the-art therapies, but they all fell short. Each time, Ethan seemed to grow weaker, and Daniel's hope drained further. But Tiana's promise lingered in the back of his mind like a glimmer of light in the darkness. "Feed me, and I'll heal your son." Her voice echoed in his thoughts. What did she mean? Could a meal really make a difference? For someone as grounded in logic and science as Daniel, it was hard to swallow. The idea seemed outlandish, even absurd. But the weight of his son's illness and the lack of options pushed him to the edge of belief. What else did he have to lose? On a quiet evening, Daniel found himself walking back to the street corner where he had first seen Tiana. It wasn't like him to entertain wild ideas, but something about her calm confidence had intrigued him. As he approached, there she was again, sitting on the same sidewalk, as if she had been waiting for him all along. Her presence was serene, almost otherworldly, in stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed his life recently. "I knew you'd come," Tiana said, her voice as steady as ever. Her smile was gentle, as though she had all the time in the world. Daniel paused, his mind racing. "I don't understand," he said, feeling a strange mixture of skepticism and hope. "How can food heal my son? It doesn't make sense." Tiana's gaze softened. "Healing comes from understanding. What we put in our bodies is just the beginning. But it's about balance, body, mind, and spirit. I can help you find that balance for your son." Daniel shook his head. He was still skeptical, but the desperation he felt for his son pushed him forward. Maybe she had something he didn't understand. Maybe this was the answer he had been searching for all along. "All right," he said, exhaling a deep breath. "What do you need me to do?" Tiana's smile widened. "Come with me." She led Daniel to a small apartment in a quieter part of town, a stark contrast to the luxury he was accustomed to. There, she began preparing a meal, a simple dish with ingredients that seemed ordinary at first glance. Fresh vegetables, grains, and herbs. But as she worked, she spoke of food in a way Daniel had never heard before. "This is food with intention," she explained as she carefully measured each ingredient. "My family has passed down the knowledge of food as healing. The earth provides everything we need. It's not about fancy treatments or pills. It's about connection. It's about nourishment." Daniel watched her in silence, still unsure but willing to try anything. The smell of the cooking meal filled the apartment, rich and earthy, with an unexpected warmth. It wasn't just the aroma of food, it felt like the scent of something deeper, a promise of comfort, healing, and hope. That night, Daniel brought the meal to Ethan's bedside. His son was too weak to sit up on his own, but he was still alert enough to take a small bite. Daniel watched closely, his heart pounding with a mix of disbelief and cautious optimism. Ethan chewed slowly, and Daniel waited, watching for any sign of change, any sign that Tiana's promise was real. The first few days after the meal were filled with small signs, tiny changes that Daniel didn't want to get his hopes up about. Ethan began eating a little more easily. His color improved, ever so slightly. He seemed more alert, less distant, more like the boy Daniel had known before the illness took hold of him. Daniel had seen all of this before with other treatments, temporary improvements that faded just as quickly as they came. But this felt different. The doctors couldn't explain it. One evening, Daniel sat in the hospital room with the head physician, who reviewed Ethan's charts with a furrowed brow. "Mr. Daniels," the doctor said, his voice uncertain, "we're not sure how to explain this. Ethan's vitals are stabilizing. His numbers, his heart rate, his oxygen levels, they're all improving. This is unusual." Daniel felt a flicker of hope ignite in his chest. Was it possible? Could a simple meal, prepared with care and intention, be responsible for his son's improvement? That night, he sat in the quiet of his mansion, staring out at the dark city skyline, trying to make sense of what was happening. He knew he had to see Tiana again. There was more to this than just food. Something about her, something about the way she spoke, felt real, genuine. The next morning, Daniel called her. She answered immediately. "I think it's working," Daniel said, his voice filled with both disbelief and hope. "Ethan is better, Tiana. But I don't understand. How is this possible?" Tiana's calm voice answered, "Healing doesn't have to make sense. It's about restoring balance, not just to the body, but to the soul. You've been searching for a cure in places that couldn't give it to you. But it's all about the right nourishment, the right connection." Daniel felt a sense of peace wash over him. There was still so much he didn't understand, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path. He had started this journey with nothing but doubt, and now he was beginning to see a glimmer of hope. As the days went on, Ethan's health continued to improve. Slowly, he regained strength. He was no longer confined to his bed, and Daniel began to see the boy he thought he had lost forever. He watched Ethan laugh with his friends again, his eyes sparkling with life, something that had seemed impossible just weeks before. The doctors, still baffled, couldn't explain the sudden change. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," they urged, though they remained skeptical of the unconventional treatments. But while Ethan's recovery seemed to defy medical logic, Daniel found himself facing a more complicated question. He had put his trust in Tiana, a girl with no credentials, no formal training, and no proof beyond her simple promise. What had she done to Ethan, really? And why had she chosen them? One evening, as Daniel sat in his office, staring at his phone, he felt a sudden urge to see Tiana again. He had questions he didn't even know how to ask. He called her, and within moments, she agreed to meet. "Why did you help us?" Daniel asked, his voice low, filled with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "What did you see in Ethan?" Tiana's eyes softened, and she paused before responding. "I saw what you couldn't. I saw love and hope, buried under your fear. Sometimes, it takes someone else to show us what we've been too scared to see." Daniel blinked, taken aback by her honesty. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had been so focused on fixing things, on finding a cure, that he had overlooked the power of hope, the power of simply believing in something beyond the tangible. "But how did you know this would work?" Daniel pressed. "How did you know that food, of all things, would help?" Tiana smiled gently, her expression warm but knowing. "It wasn't about the food. It was about connection. The body knows how to heal when we stop fighting it. I gave Ethan what he needed, a reminder that he's not alone, that someone sees him and believes in him." Her words were simple, but they cut deep. Daniel had been so wrapped up in his own desperation that he had forgotten the power of belief, the power of love. "You've been searching for answers in all the wrong places," Tiana continued, her voice soft but firm. "Sometimes, the answers are closer than we think." Daniel sat quietly, absorbing her words. He realized that her healing wasn't just about the food, it was about the care, the attention, and the belief in his son's strength. It was about trust. "I never believed in miracles," Daniel admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm starting to. I've seen it in Ethan, and now I'm seeing it in myself." Tiana nodded. "That's the first step. Believing in yourself and the people you love." As the days passed, Daniel began to change. He found himself letting go of his old ways of thinking. No longer did he focus solely on doctors and treatments. Now, he focused on Ethan's strength, on his own strength, and on the love they shared as a family. He spent more time with Ethan, talking to him, laughing with him, and simply being present. He began to heal, too, slowly but surely. Yet, the question still lingered in the back of Daniel's mind. Why had Tiana chosen them? What did she truly want in return? Was she some kind of healer, or was there something else at play? As he walked into the kitchen one evening, his thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Tiana. She smiled when she saw him. "I've been thinking about our conversation," Daniel said. "And I still don't fully understand. Why me? Why my son?" Tiana's smile softened. "Because you were ready. You needed to believe again. And sometimes, we just need someone to show us how." Her answer was simple, yet it left Daniel feeling like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He didn't need all the answers. He didn't need to understand everything. Sometimes, it was enough to simply trust. And in that moment, he realized he had never truly trusted before. Not in the way he should have. If this moment resonated with you, please give the video a thumbs up. As Daniel reflected on his journey, he began to understand that the healing process was more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and relational. The true miracle wasn't just in Ethan's recovery, but in the way their family had rediscovered each other, had found peace in the midst of their chaos. But as their lives slowly returned to normal, new challenges began to surface. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play. Tiana had healed Ethan, but what did that mean for the future? Was the healing complete, or was this just the beginning? Despite Ethan's continued recovery, an unease settled in Daniel's heart, growing heavier with each passing day. The more he thought about Tiana, the more questions he had, questions he hadn't dared to ask until now. What was her real purpose? Why had she come into their lives? And what did she expect in return for her kindness? One evening, Daniel called her to meet him at his office. He was sitting by the window, gazing out at the city lights below when she arrived. Her presence was calm, her steps quiet, but there was something about her that seemed out of place in his luxurious world. Tiana sat down across from him, her posture relaxed, her eyes unwavering. "I need to know the truth," Daniel said, his voice a mixture of concern and urgency. "You've healed my son in ways no doctor could. But I can't help but feel there's more to this. Why us? What do you want?" Tiana was silent for a moment, studying him as though weighing her words carefully. Finally, she spoke. "I don't want anything from you, Daniel. I'm not here for money or recognition. I came to help because, sometimes, we're given the chance to show others what they can't see themselves. I saw in your family what you couldn't see. You needed healing, too." Daniel's heart thudded in his chest. There it was again, this simple truth that felt so profound yet so elusive. She wasn't here for any material gain. She was here to remind them of something deeper, something they had long forgotten in their search for answers. "I don't understand," Daniel admitted, his voice quiet now. "We've had everything, a good life, wealth, power, but it wasn't enough to save my son. You've shown me something I can't explain. But what if it's not enough? What if I'm not enough?" Tiana looked at him, her gaze soft yet firm. "We're all enough, Daniel. The key is in believing that. It's easy to forget when we're surrounded by expectations, by what others say we should do, but sometimes the answer isn't in grand gestures. It's in the small moments, like sitting with your son, showing up when it's hard, and believing that healing is possible, even when it seems impossible." Her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He had spent so much time chasing after solutions that he had failed to see what was right in front of him. His family, his love for his son, his own strength to keep going. In all the years of seeking answers, he had never realized that healing wasn't just about the body. It was about the heart. But despite her wisdom, Daniel couldn't escape the doubts that clouded his mind. What if Tiana's help wasn't enough? What if something else happened to Ethan? Was this improvement just temporary, a false hope that would fade? He found himself caught in a spiral of fear, questioning everything. The next few days were tense. Ethan, despite showing so much promise, began to slip slightly. He became tired again, his energy waning. Daniel's anxiety grew. What if this was it? What if the miracle was just a fluke? One night, as he sat by Ethan's bedside, the young boy turned to him with a concerned look. "Dad, why do you look so sad?" Ethan's voice was weak, but it carried a sense of understanding far beyond his years. Daniel swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "I'm just worried about you, son. I don't want you to get sick again." Ethan smiled softly, his eyes bright despite his condition. "Dad, remember what Tiana said? About believing? I think we need to keep believing. I'm getting better. I can feel it." Daniel's heart clenched in his chest. It was hard to believe when fear clouded everything, but looking into Ethan's eyes, he realized how much his son had already grown, how far he had come. Despite the doubts, Ethan was still fighting, still hopeful. Maybe that's what they all needed, a little more faith. As the days passed, Daniel tried to quiet the doubts that continued to race through his mind. He focused on the small victories, Ethan walking a little farther, eating a little more, laughing with his friends once again. The fear still lingered, but it was gradually replaced with hope, small and fragile, but hope nonetheless. Have you ever felt uncertain, but pushed through because of someone else's belief in you? If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. And yet, even with hope growing, another test was on the horizon. A phone call Daniel received one morning would shake him to his core, raising new questions about Tiana's true role in this miraculous recovery. He couldn't avoid it anymore. The path ahead was unclear, and the stakes were higher than ever. Would the truth about Tiana's past finally come to light? Or would Daniel have to face a new, even greater challenge? The phone call came early one morning, interrupting the peaceful quiet Daniel had grown accustomed to in the past few days. His hands shook slightly as he reached for the receiver, his heart thumping in his chest. "Mr. Daniels, we need to talk." The voice on the other end was urgent, but distant, someone from Ethan's medical team. "What is it? Is there something wrong with Ethan?" Daniel's voice caught in his throat. After everything they had gone through, after seeing Ethan recover in ways that defied all odds, the last thing he expected was another setback. "No, Mr. Daniels. It's about the treatment. We've been reviewing Ethan's progress, and we've noticed some discrepancies," the doctor continued, his words measured, deliberate. "We can't explain the rapid improvements. The charts, the scans, everything is pointing in an odd direction. We've never seen anything like it." Daniel sat up straight, his stomach sinking. "What are you saying? Are you suggesting something is wrong?" "We're not sure, but we've had some concerns raised," the doctor said. "I think you need to come in for a consultation. There are some things we need to discuss regarding Ethan's treatment and the methods involved." Daniel hung up the phone, his mind racing. Was this the end of their miracle? Could the healing Tiana had brought them somehow be unnatural? And what did the doctors mean by discrepancies? He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. He didn't waste time. He arranged for the next available appointment with the doctor and rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding the whole way. As he sat in the sterile, white office, the fear crept in. He thought about how far they had come, how much had changed in Ethan's life, and now, it felt as if it was all slipping away. The doctor entered the room, his face solemn. He sat across from Daniel, his eyes avoiding direct contact. "Mr. Daniels," the doctor began, "I've reviewed the case again with my team. Ethan's recovery, it doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked, leaning forward, desperation in his voice. "He's getting better. You saw it. He was dying, and now he's getting stronger every day. We've seen it with our own eyes." The doctor nodded slowly, his fingers tapping against the desk. "We've seen improvement, yes. But we don't have an explanation. The treatments we've given him haven't worked as expected. There's no scientific reason for his recovery. Daniel's mind flashed back to Tiana. The meals. The quiet words of wisdom. The calm that she had brought into their lives. Could her influence be the reason for Ethan's recovery? Was it possible that something so simple could defy all medical logic? I've seen the charts, Daniel said, his voice low but determined. And I've seen my son. I don't care what the charts say. I know what's happening. Ethan is getting better because of the care we've given him, because of what I've learned. And I know it's because of Tiana. The doctor sighed, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was heading. Mr. Daniels, I know you're looking for answers. But we have to be careful. We can't ignore the data, and we can't rely on unproven methods. Daniel clenched his fists, the frustration rising in his chest. What if those unproven methods are the answer? What if the science doesn't have all the answers? A long silence followed. The doctor shifted in his chair, not wanting to engage with Daniel's challenge, but he had no response. In that moment, Daniel realized that he couldn't rely on the opinions of others, even if they came from the world's top doctors. Ethan was his son, and he had seen firsthand the transformation that had occurred. It wasn't just medical science that had saved him, it was belief. It was the simple act of giving love and care without expecting anything in return. It was Tiana's quiet presence and her wisdom about food and healing. When the meeting ended, Daniel left the hospital with a decision made. He would continue with what he knew to be true, what his heart told him to do. He wouldn't ignore the people who had helped him. And most importantly, he wouldn't let fear of the unknown take away the hope that had begun to restore his family. He rushed home, his mind focused. When he arrived, Ethan was sitting on the porch, staring out at the horizon, his face soft in the late afternoon sun. "Hey, bud," Daniel said, his voice a little hoarse as he approached. "Hey, Dad," Ethan responded, smiling. His smile had been growing more genuine with each passing day, and it filled Daniel's heart with warmth. "How'd it go?" Daniel sat next to him, resting his hand on his son's shoulder. "It went all right. They're still skeptical. But you and we know the truth, don't we?" Ethan nodded, his smile widening. "Yeah, we do." Daniel's heart swelled with pride. He had been so consumed with fear and doubt, but now, in the quiet moments with Ethan, he could feel the peace that had slowly returned to their lives. There was still a long road ahead, but he knew one thing for sure: Ethan's healing was real, and it was more than just the food. If this story has touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up. As Daniel sat there, a quiet peace settled in. He had come full circle. Despite all the doubts and challenges, he had learned that healing came in many forms. And sometimes, it was the simplest things, the love of a family, the care of a stranger, that could make the impossible possible. But even though Ethan was better, Daniel's journey wasn't over. There were still unanswered questions about Tiana's role in this miracle. What did the future hold for their family? What would happen next? As the days passed, Daniel began to feel a calm he hadn't known in years. Ethan's recovery continued, steady and strong, with each day brighter than the last. The uncertainty that had gripped Daniel for so long seemed to melt away, replaced with the undeniable truth. Healing doesn't always come from the places we expect. He thought back to the first time he'd met Tiana, when her simple words had sparked a flicker of hope in his heart. "Feed me, and I'll heal your son." At the time, he'd laughed, dismissed her as just another person with an improbable promise. But now, he knew the miracle was real. Not because of the food, but because of the love, the belief, and the faith that Tiana had shown in them. Faith that had reignited their own. Daniel had learned something powerful in those weeks, something he'd forgotten in his busy, results-driven life. The greatest healing doesn't always come from medicine or science. Sometimes, it comes from the quiet moments, from connecting with each other, and from trusting in something greater than yourself. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over their home, Daniel sat on the porch with Ethan, watching as the world softened in the twilight. It was peaceful here, far removed from the hospital rooms and the endless tests. Here, in the simplicity of their lives, Daniel finally felt at peace. He looked at Ethan, who was sitting with a calm, contented smile, his face full of life. It was a smile that had been absent for far too long. "Dad," Ethan said softly, turning toward him. "I'm glad we found Tiana. She saved me. I don't think I'd be here if it weren't for her." Daniel's chest tightened, and he blinked back a tear. "You saved yourself, Ethan. You always had the strength. Tiana just reminded us of it." Ethan looked up at the sky, his thoughts distant for a moment. "You know, I think I'm ready to help others now. Maybe one day, I can do what Tiana did." Daniel smiled, pride swelling in his heart. "I know you will. And when you do, I'll be right there beside you, supporting you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the bond between father and son stronger than ever. It wasn't just Ethan who had healed. Daniel had learned to open his heart again, to trust in the unexpected, and to understand that some of the most important things in life weren't things at all. They were people, connections, and love. Tiana, in the meantime, had quietly disappeared from their lives. Daniel hadn't seen her since that day when they had spoken of faith and healing. He had no idea where she had gone or what her next steps were, but somehow, that felt right. Tiana had come into their lives when they needed her most, and now, she had left them with more than they could have ever imagined. She had healed more than just Ethan's body. She had healed their spirits, their faith, and their ability to believe in miracles again. One day, Daniel received a small letter in the mail. It was from Tiana. "Take care of each other. You've always had the power to heal, Daniel. Sometimes, you just need to believe in it." The letter was simple, just a few short lines, but it left Daniel with a sense of peace he hadn't known before. She was right. They had always had the power. It was always within them. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that show us the true power of love and belief. As Daniel folded the letter and placed it on the table, he felt a gentle warmth fill the room. The journey they had been on, the pain, the fear, the healing, had taught him a lesson he would never forget. It was the quiet, everyday moments of love and connection that truly mattered. And no matter what came next, he knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. And with that, he turned to Ethan, a smile spreading across his face. "We're going to be okay, son. We've already made it through the hardest part." Ethan nodded, his hand finding his father's. "I know, Dad. We've got this." And together, they watched the sunset, knowing that the impossible had already happened, and the future was full of endless possibilities. "Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Remember, it's never too late to believe in the impossible."